All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's always nice to have you all here today. We're here all together for another lecture, and today we're going to be talking about the message of compassion, and we're going to have our friend Raphael giving us the lecture. And but as always, before we have our lecture, we are going to have our friend Danny doing the initial reading for us. Okay, Danny, it's your turn. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Okay. Nobody will solve your problem if you are not prepared to confront and solve them. You will find someone to loan you money to pay a debt, but the debt will remain. Only the creditor will change. A friend can help you carry your cross, but the cross is personal, and every individual has a duty of carrying it to his own liberating Calvary. For this reason, do not burden your friends with your complaints and problems. Try to solve your problems one by one, until you have solved them all.
So we're now going to have our initial prayer. So let us all at this moment connect our minds and our thoughts to this beautiful energy that flows from our Creator, our Father and Mother God. Through the words of Master Jesus and the teachings that we receive and we still receive every day, we ask at this moment for the blessings and the opportunity to have this session of learning, of caring, of loving. And we ask the blessings of our mentors and our spirits that fill this room today to help our friend Raphael with the presentation and each one of us so we can connect to the message and we can get that information and that knowledge straight into our hearts, into our actions. So thank you, God, for this opportunity. And may we here keep this light shining bright, not only now, but in every day of our lives. So be it.
Morning, guys. There's been a few months since last time I came here, not counting the cleaning, so coming here to see you all. And I feel really, really good if I've been being here. The topic today is compassion. So the message of compassion, based on the book Jesus at Home. And I thought a lot about preparing for this presentation and trying to decide if I was the right person to talk about compassion. And then I realized that perhaps compassion is the chance that I have to come here to talk about compassion, because I'm the first person to study, to read, and I always learn a lot when I'm preparing these presentations. So I hope that I can bring a little bit of the insights that I got during this study to you guys today. So this compassion is a virtue that is incredibly important, not just for our spiritual development, but for our happiness as immortal spirits. And we'll see on the chapter 13th, the Gospel according to Spiritism, the Spirit Mitchell, when he tells us that compassion connects us to God. It opens a breach in our common illusion that we are dived in when we are incarnated, and allow us to open our hearts for this incredible virtue. And we feel the effect on that of exercising compassion on this joy that we feel while doing it, a joy that never goes away. It continues there every time we remember that action, or the hearts that we connect to remember that action as well. And when I say that compassion connects us to God, I'm not talking about a man or a woman that controls the universe, that is always making decisions, or someone in the clouds watching over us. I'm talking about intelligence, this abstract intelligence that is all love, that is the cause of everything. Whatever it is that we cannot define right now, we use the word God, but it's something that is always with us, and it causes everything to happen, including life and including us. So we come from this intelligence, we come from this cause, and because of that, we are imprinted with its qualities. And one of them is compassion. So when we exercise that, we respond. That's the important word, because compassion is already inside of us. We all feel it because we come from God. We learn to respond to it when we feel it. And when we do it, we connect to this intelligence that created us, and then we feel whole. It fills us up. When we talk about compassion, sometimes we confuse it with empathy, but it's different. Empathy is when you are able to feel the suffering of another person. Compassion is the next step. You not only feel the other person's pain, but you choose to help. You choose to alleviate, to do something, an action to alleviate the other person's suffering. So you donate your time and whatever else you can, even if it's just a word or your presence, your company. But you donate that to alleviate that other person's suffering. And when we do that, we connect heart to heart. So it's two or more hearts connected together. And with it, this, as we read in the gospel, it has kind of a bittersweet feeling to it, because it's a joy that comes from suffering. We see suffering and we decide that there is something that I can do to help. And when we do it, we feel that joy, but it's not euphoria. It's not something that makes us jump of happiness. I can think on an example that will make us jump, other than people that like sports and then their team wins and then they cheer and they jump. I don't understand that, but I see people doing it. So it's different than that, or the joy that we feel when we buy something material. And we finally buy the car that we wanted, clothes, house, we feel, oh, good, that's very good. But that goes away. There's nothing wrong in feeling good because you acquired a material asset. There's nothing wrong with that. But we must understand that that's material, and we are immortal spirits. So we cannot expect to feel whole with anything material. It just doesn't happen. So, but we do feel with compassion because we allow ourselves to connect to other spirits. And sometimes, depending on what happens to us, we harden our spirits. So as I said, the compassion is something natural that comes from within. It comes from inside of us. I would say that almost everybody here, if not everybody, if you have a bottle of water and you see someone that is very thirsty, you're going to offer the water. Hey, here's water, just drink it. You don't even think about it because it's our nature. Nature of human beings is not to make war, is to love. And that sometimes we choose not to respond to that for one reason or another. We bury this natural virtue inside of us, and we choose not to. Sometimes because we are disillusioned with life, and we think that nobody did for me, why would I do to another person? And then we deprive ourselves from feeling this joy, from connecting to the heart of that person and receiving that and sharing this goodwill and feeling that when you exercise compassion, you not just do it for the other person, you do it for yourself as well. Whether you think about it or you don't. Most of us will do it without even thinking. And those of us who feel that but do not act on it for one reason or another, we learn to develop this again. All of us will learn to develop this compassion. For example, something that I thought about. If you have a spirit, could be any one of us, and we love, we open our hearts, and we get hurt, and we have that illusion that we got hurt because we loved too much, which is not true. Love doesn't hurt. What hurts is the selfishness that we feel because of our illusion of what love's supposed to be. We confuse love with possession and what other things, and we forget that love is unconditional. But okay, we open our hearts and then we get hurt. We get disappointed, betrayed, whatever happens. And then we close ourselves. We become hardened spirits. We close ourselves to love. And then something happens. Let's say we get involved with someone, and a child is born from that relationship. And that child, that son or daughter, it brings that love back. It brings that we learn to love again. It could be a son, a daughter, could be a spouse, it could be a pet, it could be an animal. The mammals, they can feel the same emotions that we can, and we can connect to them in the same level. What happens is that when we see other parents suffering with something that happened to their child, we start to connect. We connect so that we form empathy. And then we start opening up again ourselves. And then we feel the urge to help. That's how compassion is developed inside of us. So we go through the experiences of life, and then when we see someone that is going through the same situation, we connect to that person. We connect. Because that's the nature of every human being. We are all connected. And we desire to be even more connected. So compassion is this urge that we feel to help our brothers and sisters. And even if we sometimes close ourselves to it, something is going to happen to bring us back. And we should not prevent it. We should not be afraid to follow our spiritual urges to do good. We should never be afraid to love. Never. But this is, none of this is new. So I'm sure that you guys heard all this one way or another. But that doesn't make it easy. We'll see in the chapter 42 from Jesus in the home, Jesus and the apostles just sitting down around the table on Peter's house. And the apostles are all there, and they are talking about the difficulties of dealing with people 2,000 years ago. And they were discussing how difficult it is to live in society, the way people treat us. And Jesus was not saying anything. This was normally what he used to do. He would allow them to talk, and then in the end, after they talk among themselves, they would turn to him and, okay, Jesus, now please help us to figure this out. And then he would start answering their questions one by one and finalize with a conclusion in the evening. So it's every day on that house was a lesson. It must have been amazing. And then after the apostles, they all talk a lot about everything that happens to them. They start making questions. They turn to Jesus. Okay, now we need to see what lessons do you have for us. And then John is the first. And he asks Jesus something. They all ask about something very specific of their lives. Lord, what are we supposed to do when slander shreds our hearts? And this is an interesting choice of words, because when someone talks, when slander our name, and it hurts us, it shreds our heart. That's because we know the person. Because we know that person and we trusted that person. And then the person talks behind our backs. So that's what John is talking about. What do we do when someone betrays us and hurts us this way? And we'll see that Jesus, he has always this two-piece answers. Take pity on the slander and work for the good of all. Take pity and work for the good of all. This message, it comes over and over again, not only in Jesus' words, but when we read the books of André Luiz or Emmanuel. And I want to dissect that a little bit. But Jesus continues, and he says that love undoes the darkness of evil, and work destroys disrespectful thoughts. So the first thing is to take pity, to try to understand the other person. Try to form some sort of empathy. Why is that person doing that? Why is it? Because a person that does anything bad, when we do anything bad, is because we are suffering. We have turmoil inside of us. So that's the first thing. Nobody is slander anybody if that person is happy. So that person is suffering. And that's where what Jesus is telling us. Develop your empathy. Try to understand that person instead of hating that person or searching or seeking revenge. No, that's not going to help in any way. Which we're talking more about this. And continue what you're doing. Continue working for the good of all. What work? This is a general word. You continue living your life. Continue living your life. You never know what's going to happen. Sometimes work is just the fact of you trying not to seek revenge. So let's say a person betrays you this way, and then life gives you an opportunity. With one simple decision, you can get back to that person. You can return. You have the total power to return that. And then you think, you meditate, and you don't do it. You open yourself to interact with that person again and give that person the chance to redeem themselves. Then you can say, oh, but this doesn't sound like work. Really? Is that something that it comes that easy? You need really think about it. Right now we are here, we are sitting at TSS and we are all relaxed. But imagine if you are in that situation and you feel that betrayal. And if you are hurt, especially if you really know that person. And then you decide, no, I'm not going to take that road. I'm going to allow that person to redeem themselves. This is a lot of work. This is compassion. It's not just empathy. Empathy is try to understand the person, but you're doing another step. You're actually materializing a chance for that person to learn. That is a lot of work. And it all happens inside of our heads. Nothing outside, it's just inside of us. And then the meeting with Jesus continues, and John's brother, the other son of Zebedee, James, he does a little more broad question. And he asks, Master, and when our house is hit by crime, what am I supposed to do when faced with someone who has betrayed my trust, who has dishonored my name, or who has shed blood in my home? So it's a little bit more radical. Someone that might have attacked you, had committed some kind of crime against you. And Jesus answer again, the same structure answer. Pity every type of criminal. The same thing. Try to understand that person, that spirit. Try to understand why that spirit is doing that, which is already a lot of work. A lot of work. When I'm saying this, try to transport yourself from a situation where you went through that, and then you understand that this is not easy, but it's the best thing we can do. And Jesus continues, do not desire to break the law that your neighbor has disregarded. So the first thing, someone committed a crime against you. Okay. Do not commit the same crime. And this crime could be against the laws of nature or the laws of God, as we learn them here, or the laws of society. The law of society is a very important law that we all must obey. That's why it's described in the Spirit's book. Forgive and help. Time is responsible for giving back to everyone in accordance to their effort. Jesus he speaks, he gives a short and direct teachings, but there's a lot of depth in it. So in some point of view, this answer is the same that he gave to John. Take pity and work for the good of all. But now he talks about time. Okay, so when we think about ourselves, when someone has betrayed us or when someone committed a crime against us, we want justice. What we fail to see sometimes is that what we want, it's not justice. What we want is to create pain. That's what we want. We want to hurt and to create pain. That's revenge. However, time is what allows the natural laws to take their course, for the laws of God to take their course. Only God, only the natural laws are capable of producing justice. We can't. We cannot. The closest thing that we have is what we call the justice system or the legal system, the law of society. We have our laws. If someone commits murder, that person is going to spend some time in jail. That's how they pay their debt to society. But is that justice? We call it justice, but we can't. Justice, if we remember the statue from ancient Greece, is the Romans, is that scale, even scale. So we have murder, and then we try to even the scale with time in jail. But it doesn't match. It doesn't match. We can't. That person is not going to pay or to receive the necessary punishment for murder or for the pain that they caused by murdering a loved one. It's not the same thing. We can't. And then we decide, okay, let's kill that person. Death penalty. Okay, now that person is a spirit. So what? Still nothing. You still didn't even out the justice. There's still no justice. We put a person in jail not because of justice, but to protect society from further murders. That's what we do. Justice will come when time passes and the divine laws take their course. We all are going to receive back. But there's a difference. When we seek pain and we seek revenge, the divine laws, they only seek correction. It's not about punishment. It's not about causing pain. It's about correction. It's to correct that spirit. This is the justice. It's to correct that spirit. So that spirit one day is going to wake up, going to understand their wrongs, and they're going to work to cancel it through expiation, through proofs, through learning, suffering. It's a long process. So we can't do that. And it's not our duty or responsibility. That's why Jesus says, pity, empathy, forgive, and continue with your life. Work for the good of all. But then, if you guys are like me, and you try to make sense of every single details of the phrases, the words of Jesus, It's still not clear what it means to work for the good of all. But then, after all the questions, Jesus finishes the night when they're ready to go to sleep. And he says, if we intend to banish evils from the world, we must cultivate the love that sympathizes with the service that edifies for the happiness of all. Again, we cultivate the love and we work for the development of all immortal spirits that we have contact with, including ourselves. No one can hope to right a crime by practicing other crimes, because time changes everything on earth. This is the part that I like. With the fire of suffering or the ice of death. We can't create that. Only the divine laws can do that. We, as hardened spirits, as maybe previous criminals, we need to go through the fire of suffering and the ice of death. Fire of suffering. And we think, why would Jesus use the word fire? Fire, it burns from within. It releases the energy of a particular material, and it consumes and transforms. After the fire is extinguished, what you have is something completely different. So we burn with the fire of suffering when the combustible, when the fuel for the fire is our mistakes. It's going to stop burning when those mistakes are corrected inside of us. When we understand, not just don't do it anymore because we are afraid of the consequences, but we understand why it's wrong. We are able to, if we want to, there is a chance for us to do something bad to another person, we connect to that person. I'm not going to make that person suffer like that. I'm not going to do that. That's compassion. Or we need to go through the fire of suffering. And then the ice of death. Have you guys tried to take a cold shower in the winter? It's the temperature of the water, it's so different from the temperature of our internal organs that when the water touches our bodies, a huge amount of heat is removed instantaneously through the skin. And then we react by closing our bodies to reduce the impact with the water. We contract and we suck a lot of oxygen to replenish that energy. It's a thermodynamic effect. But the result is we wake up right away. We wake up right away. And sometimes that's the ice of death. You wake up on the other side and you see sometimes those that are waiting for you are the people who you committed crime against. It's the ice of death. It wakes you up. It wakes you up. Suicides, sadly, that they see, I can't kill myself. I just made it worse. The suffering continues and it's even worse now. The ice of death. Fire of suffering and the ice of death. That's why Jesus always talks about time. Because we need to wait for this process to run their course. And then I can start understanding a little bit more of what it is to work for the good of all. Because if you put everything together, you'll see that the criminal of today, the person that did something bad for you today, you might not be able to reach that person. But what about the criminal of yesterday? Someone that committed a crime a long time ago, sometimes many lives ago. And that person right now is ready to receive help. It went through the fire of suffering and the ice of death. And that person is ready to receive. And that person is right beside you. And you have the opportunity to help that person. That's you working for the good of all. It's not for the same criminal or the same spirit that did something bad to you, but it's to another one that now is right beside you and ready to receive help. It could be any type of help. So that's what Jesus was talking about. You work for the good of all. Don't concentrate on just that person. Continue living your life that you're going to have the chance to help another criminal. You don't even know about it, but you'll be able to do. And at that moment, then you feel that compassion and you act on it, you are an instrument of God's law to correct that spirit, to show that spirit what it is to receive love. So that's extremely important. And we talk about this or that spirit, but it could be us. I've learned a few weeks ago, very recently, that sometimes we forget to offer compassion to ourselves. We forget that we also need compassion. We also need to forgive ourselves and to accept compassion. That's another thing. Is to learn to receive compassion. And then I was thinking, this last 2 years in my life were really eye-opening. So I had many insights, made some mistakes, and I realized many things. And I was coming here today and I was thinking that we are surrounded by this love. And when I come here to talk to you guys, it's like I see that moment, the cloud dissipates and I see clearly, like Jimmy Cliff. I see clearly now. And if you think about it, guys, there was a team of spirits that worked for our reincarnation. So let's think about that for a minute. A team of spirits that worked for us to have the body that we have now. That helped us and continue helping us. We have a family that is much bigger than we can imagine. We are surrounded by love all the time. All the time. It permeates everything in this world. Even with the diseases, both from the body and from the mind, to generate war and aggressiveness. These are all little dots involved in this globe of love. It's just tiny things that is surrounded by a universe of love. And sometimes we forget to focus on that, to forget on how much we are loved just because we were created, just because of that. And we forget that we deserve this love and we deserve this compassion. Whatever mistakes we have or whatever defects we have in our spirits, we deserve all that. And everything that happens to us, the difficulties, they are meant to correct us, to make us better, so that one day we can finally perceive this love all the time and feel that joy that we feel when we exercise compassion. We feel that all the time, not just when the clouds dissipate in brief moments, but all the time. And when we see that, we have a different perspective of life. When we wake up and there's a beautiful day and whatever landscape we see, we deserve all that. This world was created for us. Whatever we do to it, it was created for us. This is an eternal compassion that we deserve to receive. All of us. Each one of us here is being watched. It's being cared for. All of us. All the time. We forget that. We think that we're just another person. No. There's in the divine laws to God, there is no just another one. There's you, there's you, there's you, there's you. The infinite love, it's big enough to love completely, eternally, and unconditionally each single one of us. Each single one of us. But as I said, we go back to our routines, and sometimes we forget about all this. The clouds close again. But it's not going to always be that way. In the book Between Heaven and Hell, there's a very interesting scene that happened also in the Sex and Destiny from André Luiz, where is a situation when you have spirits with deaths to each other, all interconnected, since the Paraguayan War in South America, which was people don't talk a lot about it. It's not very known, but it was a very brutal and violent war. And through lust, betrayal, murder, these spirits, they connect to each other. And then Clarencio, the minister of Nosso Lar, is with André Luiz, working for these spirits. They are always working, always. They never stop. Because that's what feeds them, the compassion, the joy of working. So then they get to a point where they have to disconnect. There's one of the spirits that is incarnated, the other one is discarnated, and one is obsessing the other. And they can't just disconnect. You can't disconnect, depending on the obsessive process, you can't just cut, because it comes from both sides. It may create a huge psychic discharge. So that would materialize in both of them as a disease. So you can't just disconnect. And Clarencio, as a minister of Nosso Lar, is a very knowledgeable spirit. But at particular moment, he tells André Luiz, I can't help. It's too much for me. I can only touch minds. I need a spirit that can touch hearts. And then they go to another building to ask for help to Sister Clara, on a kind of a school. And André Luiz asks, but you are the minister of Nosso Lar. I've seen you help all the others. Why can't you help this person as well, this spirit, or these two spirits? And he said, I know magnetism. I know a lot of laws. I have my moral strength, but I don't have enough compassion to reach that spirit. Then they go to Sister Clara. And when they get there, she's teaching a class on the modulation of the voice, which is very interesting. We never think about that. And she's explaining how our thoughts, our voice modulates the speech. So I'm talking right now, and we know that what I'm doing is I'm modulating a sound wave, a compression wave that gets to your ears. But what she's saying is that that's not just what we are doing. There's an electromagnetic discharge that goes together with this voice. The intonation that I use, the way that I pronunciate the words, it carries what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. And then she's explaining all that to show that there's compassion even in the way you speak. We know that the way someone speaks to us, it affects us. We know that person may say the same sentence in many different ways, and in each way we're going to be affected in a different way. We're going to feel something. And she was saying that for those who do not have the insulation of patience and prayer, the speech modulation is extremely important. If I'm a very patient person and I insulate myself, a strong person, not the strength of the body goes away. The strength created by patience, serenity, and empathy, and trying to understand how is the other person's. If we don't have that, we receive that speech as an arrow. And she was saying that no matter what happens, anger can never be modulated with your voice. You can never use your voice to express anger. Why? Because that's, according to her, it's useless. It carries a destructive wave. It's not constructive. It's not going to construct anything. I don't need to tell you guys that, because you know. You all know that. If you start yelling, and at that moment, everything is lost. Everything is lost. You get anger or angry. What I've learned is the best thing is not to talk. You go somewhere else until you cool off. Because at that moment, you're just going to make it worse. So she was talking about the compassion in the voice, in the way we speak. Everything we say carries an energy that is going to be absorbed by the other person. And then one of the students asked, very, very interesting. I liked a lot this part of the conversation. The person asks, okay, what if we don't talk about anger? We talk about indignation. The feeling that you know something is wrong or something was done wrong. And then Sister Clara says, okay, this state is sometimes necessary. And that's another point that I would like to bring. Not to do anything ever, it's not a sign of compassion. Sometimes it's the opposite. If there is something wrong, you can use your voice to express the feeling that you know that something is wrong. And that's what it comes the exercise of each one of us. How do you express your indignation without anger in a constructive way? We control. She uses the analogy that it's like controlling a voltage source. So we increase the power because we need more power to a load, and then we we control it. It doesn't go too high or too low. It controls the exact sweet spot. She uses that, not me. It's to me makes complete sense because I do that all the time in the lab, not with my voice. But and she was teaching us that it's not about not doing anything ever. We must act. We must try to correct wrongdoings when it's constructive. If we see what Jesus did, when Jesus when in the beginning, when he just started his walks to start spreading the gospel, and he got to Jerusalem, and he's approached by one of those priests. And in all those situations, Jesus just answered very short questions, very short answers. He doesn't spend much time. He doesn't spend much time. But when he is with the apostles or with those that are ready to receive, then he spends all the time in the world. And when it was time for him to express his indignation without anger, when it was the case with the adulterous woman, he was just passing by, and people were about to stone her to death. And he goes there and he expresses, no, this is wrong. But he doesn't yell at people. He uses his words with power to try to correct that mistake that was about to happen. And we can do that too. It doesn't mean that we should get upset all the time. That's also something that Sister Clara teaches us. That would create an imbalance. So this is our exercise. That's why we have to focus on our development in each incarnation, because we have to kind of understand what is the balance of all this. How do I exercise compassion, but at the same time, I don't allow all the crimes to go, not unpunished, but to go free. If someone is trying to break into my house, if I open the door, come, take everything you want. This is not compassion. But perhaps helping that spirit by contributing for that spirit to respond to society according to the laws of society may actually help that spirit. So that's the balance that we all must work with. Well, in the end, Sister Clara went to take care of the obsessive process, and the first thing that she does is to hug the obsessor. First, she felt the pain of the obsessor spirit, and she gets emotive, and she's, poor woman, she must be suffering a lot to be obsessing this other spirit. She feels the pain of the obsessor. She doesn't feel rage from that person to make another spirit suffer. She feels the pain that the obsessor must be feeling, that is causing that whole process. That's why she was called. That's why she had all that compassion. And then she talks to the spirit, but at the same time hugging as a mother. And then eventually, the spirit concedes and they are able to disconnect just by the power of compassion. Sometimes that's all we need. Our studies, our intellectual endeavor are all important, but we have to use that to develop our hearts, to develop ourselves as a whole. So we got to the end of our hour, And I would just like to leave this with you, that we have this power of being compassionate, and we never know what is the impact that our help will have on another spirit. It may not mean anything to us, but we must be open to it. Must be open. We may be helping the criminal of yesterday that finally is mature enough to receive help, as we are, as also criminals of yesterday. So let's not close ourselves to all this love that surrounds us, but remember that it is there with everything that we see on a world in transition as it is ours, with the wars and the misconcepts that are being shared all over through our globalized communication system. Let's remember that one day we'll all understand and we'll all find our balance. Thank you, guys. Okay, so now I'm open for comments, questions from here or internet. Is there anything? No? Yes.
I don't have something to add. Like this talk, like thank you very much for this talk. Like it was phenomenal. But yeah, like it brought me back to like this time that I went to this art exhibit, and if I'm not wrong, it was a Japanese artist, and what he did was like he took photographs of water that he put in rooms where like this water was under words of like love or words of hate, or like like he would basically like just leave this water in this room with like these sounds, these speeches being impacted by these electromagnetic waves of this speech, and then he would like literally photograph how these power of words would actually like change the shape of molecules of water. So like that was the exhibit. And the whole point of the exhibit was basically like to remind people that like, considering that most of our bodies are made of water, so like how not only the electromagnetic waves of speech, but also of our own thoughts could be like affecting, like could like scientifically affect us just by the fact that like we're mostly composed of water. So like, I would encourage everyone to look for it. Like if I remember, like I'll try to find it and like maybe I can send in the group chat. But like it was like a very powerful art exhibit and very sensitive. And like it's kind of interesting to see how our words or like thoughts can actually affect the shape of what we're most composed of. So like I thought it was like just brought me back to this, and I thought it was nice.
Yeah, this is actually an experiment that it was reproduced many times, and the result is always the same. Sometimes they try to not only put the words, but they freeze the water to see the differences, because depending on the characteristic of that water, the crystallization of the ice will be different, and it's always different. Interesting enough, most scientists don't apply science for this type of thing. We have this blind faith. It happens in science as well. But it is a very interesting experiment that proves the words of Sister Clara, so that we can understand that what we say has a consequence.
Just a story on that concept. So I have a friend that had a dog that had a huge cancer on his mouth, and for many, many years. And my friend didn't have enough money to pay for the surgery for the dog. So the only thing that he thought about doing, he thought about that experiment, and he was kind of blessing the water of the dog. So he was like, not really praying, but just saying like cure and like pray and love and just putting that energy into the water of the dog. And after a few weeks, the cancer went away. So we were shocked, but yeah, just a story.
That's very interesting because the placebo effect doesn't play a part in that because the dog cannot be self-suggested.
It's very interesting what you said, and I realize how short-minded we are. When we read a book or when we see a movie, and we are all about praying and helping, supporting, and on the side of obsessed person. But very uncommon for us to be on the obsessor side. And when we really apply everything that you said, and I think it's Sister Clara.
Sister Clara, yeah.
That person, that obsessor, actually might be the sick person.
Yeah.
Needs help, right? And saying sick might not be the right word, but it's like it's just how short-minded we are when we put us on one side of that.
That's why Jesus always responded to the apostles, take pity, forgive. Because the person who is doing the bad act is the one that is suffering the most. If we know that, because when we do something wrong, that stays with us, and then years later it comes the memory, and remorse hurts. Remorse hurts a lot.
Interesting enough, Sandra sent us a message this week or last week regarding about that, right? Do we pray for our obsessors? We should, right? We should put them on our prayers because they might need more help than us.
Marco?
Other than that, more than that, nothing in life need more help. They do need more help. Like, I agree. It's like more powerful than that. This is a fact. That's we tend to see. There's so many stories of that. Ruby couldn't have her as an example, right? So we start the first chapter with like this massive fight between the obsessed and Adila, right? And the father and the stepfather. And Adila is painted as this horrible, dark spirit that comes and do all those negative things, right? Just to turn around and actually be spiritual guardian of the family again, and actually fixing everything in the story because of her. She starts at this really, I can start the book, the first chapter is all about everyone here would read that book and say, oh, I want that spirit to go away. Right? This is so bad. Why is this happening to this family? 100%. We all do it, right? And then at the end of the book, we're like, wow, she actually helped the entire group of incarnate spirits to actually get better. Right?
Paulo de Tarso, by the way.
Paul, yeah, so great example. So this is a great example. Like 100%. Like we always try to put ourselves into this victim position and say that we're the ones that need help. Realistically, not really. You're right. Like, a lot of people.
Anything? Yes.
You're talking today. I'm just going through a specific person that through my work I have to exercise every single minute empathy and compassion. The more you do, sometimes I look at this individual that is at Mount Sinai, that she has many issues. Is in a bariatric bed bound, all kinds, ALC, and that's at the hospital. And I sit every week in this disciplinary team that you have to review what you did. It's a lot of pressure. And I went there for her to sign consents for me to help her. And she told me the F word. I just I want to get out and say, "Look, I'm done." So and then I thinking, reflecting, sit on her shoes, put her shoes. And then I said, she goes through a lot, so I have been going to support this. But then I say, I do compassion for myself also. Because sometimes it's very difficult to, and the time, to have the compassion for your own. Because so many other things that you have to do for others. So this is what I'm learning now, to take care of myself, because I need compassion too.
Marco?
I just have a quick comment about the water crystal, water photography crystals. I mean, those are really nice things to use, like I think Professor Miyamoto or something like that.
Yes, my son.
But we have to be very careful with over-interpreting things we see. We tend to do that in spiritism all the time. For example, with aura photographies and manifestations and spiritual things, and those are great, right? But that's not what's important, right? So just when you're looking at this, don't over-interpret it as something that, okay, this is really what it's all about. Realistically not. There's so many things that can change crystallization patterns from materials like that. That is great, but it's a fact, it happens. But most importantly, let's just be very careful interpreting that, because that's really not the core of the message, let's put it this way, right? I think for a fact, what we're learning in spiritism to explain a lot of those things, right? But the physical manifestation of things should be secondary to what we're talking about today, which is the compassion and all that, right? So, and realistically speaking, that does not explain anything. Actually, the opposite, right? It's just a fact, right? It's just like when a spirit manifests, it's a fact, right? We know it happens, but it's not the important thing, right? So, I just want to make that small comment, so people kind of interpret it with caution. Yeah.
I think about that a lot, and I always remember when Chico Xavier and Emmanuel did their materialization sections, and they did for a short while, and it was amazing. May just materialized and cured one of people sitting on the public, but it was very short. And then Emmanuel said, "Okay, you did what you wanted, but now let's go back to writing books." And we say that Spiritism is a science, but I see more as a science inside of us. We put into practice and we see if it works or not. But we cannot call a science as physics, for example. And sometimes we say that, it's a science. Okay, so then let's reproduce the experiment right now. Let's go to the lab and reproduce the experiment. We can't. And it's not the focus of going there and try to reproduce that. Try to put all the efforts in materializing a spirit. That's not going to change our hearts. I think that the talk that we had today is much more productive than if we were all sitting and observing a materialization of a spirit. Okay, the spirit is there, materialized, has a weight, we put on the scale. Okay, now what? We came from the spiritual world. We know spirits exist. We are gonna go back there tonight when we go to sleep. So, okay, but that's another lecture. So, all right, guys. Any other comments? No? So let's go for our pass. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I want to thank everyone over the internet that was with us here, and hoping to see you guys here next week with us.